Hi, I'm Matt Person, and I'm with Curt Simon, who is the Executive Director of Metro Area Transit, known as Metro in Omaha. And Curt's going to talk a little bit about what the business does, and then we're going to go through some questions that pertain to kind of how they think about their business ethically and what considerations they make when they make decisions.
Okay.
Curt?
Well, thanks, Matt. Well, Metro is a political subdivision of the state of Nebraska. It was established in 1972 by state statute. A lot of people get confused that we're actually a department of the city or like public works or planning, and we're not. We're autonomous. The mayor does appoint our board, which has 5 members. That autonomy is good because it keeps some of the politics out of our business. So, for example, an incoming mayor or an incoming councilman or outgoing councilman, they can't say, I want more service in my district, or I want less service in my district. We're free to operate our business as we see fit and allocate the services we think is most appropriate. It's operated that way since 1972, as I said. A few years ago, we went through somewhat of a transformation in our name and our how we looked at ourselves, rebranded our fleet to try and have a more consistent image out there on the street. And so what we do is we provide your public transit bus service in the city of Omaha. We also provide what's called our Mobi service, which is service for persons who are disabled or cannot use the bus for one reason or another. We provide complimentary service for those persons as well. So in a nutshell, that's what we do.
Okay, great. When it comes to how you define yourself at corporate and how you lead with a good tone at the top, what kind of code of conduct or corporate policies does Metro have?
Well, we have a host of policies that deal with business ethics, and we have lots of rules and regulations that our employees are required to follow. Most of those are offshoots of those policies. Things, for example, like not having not benefiting personally from any business activities that one would have, things of that nature, and that goes all the way down to the bus operators, for example. So it's not real rocket science. They are memorialized in policy and in rule books, but basic golden rule really kind of still applies to try and treat people the way you want to be treated, and by and large, that works pretty well. We're very conscious of our obligation to the taxpayers, both the taxpayers that use our system and the taxpayers that don't. So we're constantly dealing with that situation, trying to get the right kind of balance with that.
Great. When employees are hired, whether it be a bus driver or a finance director, is there any kind of ethics involved in the training as they're onboarded and brought into the organization?
Well, as you'd suspect, the bus operators are the largest unit of employees that we have here. We have about 300 employees. Probably about 183 of those are bus operators or those Mobi van drivers, and they go through a fairly rigorous 6-week training course. It covers, as you would expect, driving all the different buses and dealing with all the different routes, but it has a fair amount about how to deal with people, how to diffuse potentially disruptive behavior, how to take care of persons who might be either mentally or physically handicapped, a whole host of training regarding the Americans with Disabilities Act. So there's a fair amount of training that gets to that business ethics and particularly how you treat people. We typically would have a panel, for example, of persons that might be experiencing various disabilities, and we'll have them come in and speak to our new operator class, because what we find that does is that people are typically afraid and act differently about what they don't understand. And so when we have this panel of 5 or 6 different persons in with a variety of disabilities, it really brings that down to a very personal level and gets rid of some of that fear factor. And so it's been very helpful to us. So it's a good training program. 6 weeks is a long time to be in training.
Yeah. And that kind of goes into another issue of the public safety in general. What kind of steps does Metro take to ensure that the safety of its riding public as you talked about, training drivers to make sure they can handle dispute resolution situations and just ensuring the comfort and security of all passengers?
Well, obviously, we do the best we can. We have systems in place that try to ensure the safety of passengers. All the buses are equipped with video surveillance. There's 5 cameras on every bus in our system, including our Mobi vans. The bus operator also has a covert button, if you will, that if there's some kind of an incident that he doesn't want to draw attention to, or she, they can press this button and it'll automatically transmit to our dispatch office, where we can view live video and audio of that incident as it's occurring. So we take the safety of customers and our patrons and our employees very seriously. A big part of that 6-week training class gets into a lot of these safety issues. It gets into a lot of the issues about driving in general, driving safely. We talk about road rage, how to handle it, how to deal with, nobody wants to be behind a bus, they always like to cut in front of you. How to deal with unruly passengers, just a whole host of those kind of issues. So to the extent that we can make it safe for our customers to travel, we try to do everything we possibly can to make sure that happens.
Great. And I imagine having cameras also has an added benefit of anytime there's any litigation or anything that arises from a incident on a bus, there's evidence of what actually has occurred.
And sometimes evidence of what hasn't occurred that's
Yeah.
been reported. So yeah, it's been very helpful. The cameras have that investment probably paid for itself in a year. There were a number of people who had claimed an injury as a result of an accident. Gee whiz, when we looked at the film, they weren't even on the bus. So it has really helped in that regard. The other thing that it's helped with is that our bus operators, initially they were apprehensive about these cameras. As you'd suspect, they kind of thought it was a big brother kind of an issue, but what it's really done is 9 out of 10 times it typically vindicates the employee, as opposed to trying to confirm that they've done something wrong. What's actually happening is it's coming back and showing us that they've done it exactly right in most instances. So they've recognized it for that, and they're pretty thankful for it right now.
Okay. I'm gonna, one more general question kind of about the corporate environment. Are there any philanthropic activities or fundraising or anything that Metro's involved in?
Well, we don't typically involve ourselves in what you might consider philanthropic efforts. There are too many needs in our community, and being a taxing entity is probably not appropriate for us to provide, for example, contributions to one service or another. What we do though is we do partner with different institutions. The Metro Community College, for example, is a very solid partner of ours. They have a book giveaway program, for example, where once a year they'll give away books, and it's been turned in called Books by the Busload. So we take a bus full of books, we take it out to about 3 or 4 different locations, and then they disseminate these free books. We get involved in Martin Luther King Day and providing a mobile museum that shows a little bit of the Black history in America, and plus Black history as it pertains to Omaha as well.
Okay.
So where we can be involved in those kind of activities, that's where we team with somebody who's trying to provide a philanthropic effort.
Great.
And if we can help, we do.
Okay, great. And you'd mentioned on having to pick and choose, because really you serve a need in the community. How does Metro go about balancing the need to serve kind of the underserved portion of the population with maximizing their fare box revenue and being as profitable as possible?
Well, profitable is not necessarily a word we're typically accustomed to. Public transit in the city of Omaha is subsidized and fairly highly subsidized. We're not unique. If you were to look at any public transit institution around the United States, you'd probably find that they're subsidized to some degree or not. We have a fairly fixed income as it pertains to our budget, so we do have to decide where it's best to allocate those assets, which are the miles and the routes that we're providing. And it does become a balancing act of where is the need versus where is the patronage. There clearly are some routes that we operate in areas that don't perform as well as they might someplace else, but we operate them anyhow because we recognize there's a social need to provide those. So to the extent our budget will permit that sort of thing, we do that. Having said that, this is a large community. It covers a lot of square miles, and it's our planning and our land use over the course of the last 20 years, as we've grown west, has not necessarily been conducive to public transportation. Our population density has been dispersed, and good population density and transit go hand in hand. It's kind of a tough city to serve with transit.
Yeah, and I guess, are there any kind of subsidies, or what kind of price breaks are you able to give to individuals who may not have the funds? Is there anything available to them for help?
Well, we provide a student discount, for example. The regular fare is $1.25 with a 25-cent transfer, and we provide a student fare for $1 with no charge for the transfer. We do get involved in various programs. We're involved in the Summer Works program, for example, which is an education program where we'll provide some discounted fares through the summer. By and large, we don't provide any wholesale discounts for fares. I mean, the fare already is $1.25.
Yeah.
It's already heavily subsidized by the public.
And I suppose if you buy monthly, there's some.
There is. You can buy a monthly pass for $55, and your travel's unlimited with that monthly pass. So if you use the bus a lot, it's a good deal. If you don't use the bus very much, probably not a very good deal. But there's no limit to the number of organizations and people that would like to get a free bus ride. So considering how highly it's already subsidized, you know, we're really pretty cognizant of the fact that the people that pay the fare should pay part of their fair share. Right now, the fare box recovery is probably about 17% of the total revenue that it takes to run the place. It should probably be in the 25% range is what it ought to be. If you were to look at public transit institutions across the country, you'd probably find they're between 14 and 28%, depending upon where they are. So again, we're not unique in that.
Yep. Okay. Can you talk a little bit about the opening of the North Omaha Transit Center and what the decision was there and what you think the benefit will be?
Well, the decision there was really a fairly easy one. That we opened the original facility, I believe, back in the mid-90s, like 1996 or 97. And as time has gone on, it had gotten into a state of disrepair. So it needed an upgrade. It happens to be located such that it strategically is where a lot of routes currently cross. So logistically, it's in a very good spot. So instead of going out and trying to find something we thought would work better, it really does sit geographically in exactly the right spot. We did think that it certainly needed an upgrade in passenger amenities to bring it up to the speed of some of our other transit centers we've had recently, like at Benson Park, for example, and the West Roads, which were nicer facilities than the North Omaha Transit Center. Well, now the North Omaha Transit Center really is probably the nicest transit center we have. It serves more routes in our community and more passengers than any other transit center in the system.
Great. When we talk about focusing and how the North Omaha Transit Center is able to serve more passengers than any, what considerations go into making bus routes and where they can serve the most people? And kind of a piggyback on that, does Metro feel like they have some responsibility to kind of contain urban sprawl or help focus on where they can to revitalize downtown and serve that area?
Well, that's about 5 questions in one. So first, to how routes are designed, it's really gotten quite sophisticated. You know, we'll actually do, like for example, we just recently went through an onboard survey. We took all the data. We geocoded both their boarding and alighting locations. We also, it was a very good survey. The return was very high percentage of return. So we were also able to actually get their origins and destinations, not just where they got on the bus and where they got off. They'd give us their addresses from home. So we were able to take all of that data and then plot it out and geocode it and put it on a map so we could spatially see where these people were coming from and where that need might exist.
Wow.
Here, you know, in prior years before you had that kind of technology, you'd do surveys. You'd try to find out where the people might want to go, where they would go. Having said that, you know, nothing stays the same. Businesses change, businesses relocate, some routes that were popular at one time aren't anymore
Yeah.
because of that, and they have to be changed and modified in order to meet the need. A couple good one real good example of that is that in the not too distant past, the Walmart on 50th and Ames opened. Well, probably about 3 months ago, maybe 4. And we saw a real jump in ridership on that route that serves Ames Avenue at 50th. And so we're looking at the possibility of adding additional service to that route because we believe that route can absorb additional service and actually be more productive than it is currently. But we continually evaluate our routes to see what's productive and what's not. It's not unusual for us to reallocate route assets from where they're no longer productive to where we think they can be more productive. Having said that, your other question was about trying to curb urban sprawl. And I don't know to what extent transit can really do that. I think that really has to come from solid, strong development and land use patterns that encourage multimodal type of activities. An example I like to use is that we often get asked why we don't have any service on West Maple. Well, if you think about west of I-680, and say you're going to go to the Bakers at about 134th and Maple. Well, there aren't any sidewalks west of about 102nd Street, all the way to Bakers at 133rd Street. And if I take you out there, I'm going to be dropping you off on a state highway that has no sidewalks, and you're going to have to transverse a drainage ditch and then a 600 stall parking lot to get to the front door of the Baker's supermarket. So using that example, I think you can see that that's not particularly what anyone would consider to be transit, bike, or pedestrian friendly. Our development has clearly been around getting a car in and out of our suburban areas. And that's a choice we've made. Now there are some plans coming forward they'll change some of that as we move forward. But I don't think that transit can play a role in that, but I think it's a fairly minor role in our ability to control any of that.
Okay. And what do you see as the future development plans for Metro in the next 5 to 10 years?
Well, we've seen a surge of popularity in transit. We've particularly seen this in the millenniums, that we've heard a lot of feedback that, we don't want our community to have a brain drain. At the same time, we want higher level public transit in our community. So since say 2004, we had about 3.2 million passengers per year. Now, here in early 2014, we're at 4.2 million passengers per year. So the people have started to gravitate to the system. Part of that's been because they think it's the right thing to do. Part of that's been because of the economy since 2008. Part of that's been because we've rebranded our system. We've actually improved our service and our product. I think the future is probably pretty bright. I think there's some real momentum and positive things happening right now that can propel transit and make it very solid and much improved in the future.
Okay. And you talked about passengers potentially thinking it's the right thing to do. And a lot of that probably stems from either environmental thoughts or just road congestion. Along the environmental avenue, what does Metro do to minimize their environmental footprint and be as carbon neutral as a transportation system possibly could be?
Well, we have a grant to purchase 6 compressed natural gas buses that we're going to test in our fleet. And we get that question a lot. Why don't you use natural gas? Well, you don't just automatically wave a magic wand and convert to natural gas. There are infrastructure considerations. For example, the building is not designed to properly vent compressed natural gas. So the building requires renovation in order to make that happen. Well, it takes resources and money to make that happen. So we're in the process of renovating a portion of our facility to be able to accommodate both the repair and working on those CNG buses. So we'll test out 6 of those in our fleet, probably within the next 12 months. Having said that, the Environmental Protection Agency, they do place a number of very stringent requirements on engine manufacturers and diesel engine manufacturers. And the clean diesel engines that we're getting today, they're not your black smoke billowing engines of the past. They have all kinds of different means by which to mitigate the exhaust that they're pushing out. In some cases, some of the exhaust is probably cleaner than the air you and I are breathing right now. So, you know, clean diesel it's probably not as maybe it's not as cool, not as hip, probably not as sexy as CNG, not as sexy as an electric bus, but there have been great strides in diesel manufacturing over the course of the years. So, having said that, we're obviously not opposed to looking at other technologies and trying them out. So that's one way we can reduce our carbon footprint. Another way we can do it is to make better use of the resources that we have by tying our routes together and maybe trying to do what we call interlining from one route to another, for example, that would possibly reduce the number of buses that are out on the street at any given time. So we're looking at some of those efficiencies too.
Great. And then the last question is just around business ethics. Have you seen an evolving climate of business ethics in your career? Has it stayed pretty consistent, or just what's the culture like?
Well, that's an interesting question. I guess it all depends. It certainly, business has changed over the course of my career, and I think that there are far more considerations as to how you conduct your business today than there were, say, for example, 20 or 25 years ago. And a lot of those most of them are very good, because they get back to how you treat people. Some of them get a little overboard, and really, I think, bog businesses down a little bit, particularly in areas of compliance, because they do become a little bit overburdensome in some of those compliance areas. It's clearly evolved and changed. You know, we're kind of an instant gratification society these days. You know, everybody has their iPhone, and everybody responds and by email. It's different, and you know, so those business ethics have expanded and evolved far beyond what they were 20 years ago. You have to take that business ethics question, and you have to extend it to all the various social media activities that you might be involved in, including how you conduct your business via email. So it's changed, it's evolved, it's better in most respects, but it's a lot different than it was before.
Well, great. That wraps up the questions that I have. I want to say thanks again for taking the time to kind of go through this and through Metro's thought process as they make decisions and develop their business, and good luck in the future.